How do I start drawing? So this is a question that not a lot of people have asked me specifically. I need to just be upfront about that right at the top. This video, the point of it isn't because a bunch of people have been asking me this question, but I wanted to make maybe one or two of these kind of videos. Maybe I'll do more in sort of a series, going from somebody who has never wanted to draw before, suddenly finding themselves in a position where they want to start drawing. And I want to make some videos coming at it from the perspective of someone who's new to drawing or wants to draw. So what I'm doing during this video, the footage that you're seeing, is I'm working on a little side project, and I'm taking some old sketches that were on some old cards that I made for a little playing card game, and I'm adding some more characters to the roster, basically. At the top of the screen, you can kind of see the bottoms of some of the cards up there, and those are all like fire-themed cards, basically. And what I'm trying to do now is, since I have some black cards up in my stock, I decided that I was going to make some shadow characters or night or sleep-themed characters that I could put into those sleeves, because I'm trying to color code it, if that makes sense. So that's what you're going to be looking at, is just footage of me sketching in real time. I didn't want to speed up the footage for this one, just for a reason that I'll get to later on, like a point that I want to make later on. But first and foremost, right, I should quickly go over how I got into drawing, because I think it's important to acknowledge how you approach drawing and your perspective on it. So I started drawing pretty much whenever I was occupied doing something else. I mean, I would find myself drawing in the margins of my textbooks. I would find myself drawing in church on the back of cards and pieces of paper, just scraps. And it wasn't that I wasn't paying attention to what was going on around me. It was the fact that I needed something a little bit extra. And it actually, in some ways, it actually helped me retain more, actually, believe it or not. Maybe less so the math, the stick figures that I draw on the margins of my math homework books. Maybe not those. Those probably weren't helping me retain much of that. But for the most part, I would draw kind of as an escape, but also as something to do, I guess, with my hands. And when I was a kid, I had a really active imagination. And, I had my own bin of action figures and stuff like that. But what do you do when your brain comes up with a character that you don't have a toy of? Well, what I would do is I would draw it with pen and color it in with crayon, and I'd cut it out with scissors, and I'd have basically a paper doll of that character I just made. And I just kept making stuff like that. I really like the physical medium. I'm trying to get better at drawing things digitally, but to me, what you're watching right now, this is my bread and butter. This is just pen and paper, as simple as it gets. It's just 8.5 by 11 copy paper, and then that's just like a Bic pen that I found I actually really like these. You can get them in like huge packs, lots of pens, and I really like them. I like how they feel in the hand, and for me at least, they don't smudge too badly. But this video isn't going to talk necessarily about materials. Maybe I'll make one on that later on. But this first one, I really just want to talk to people who are debating whether or not picking up a pen or a pencil and starting to draw, right? So the question, it's a big one, right, is how do I start drawing? And I've just mentioned it, but I'm not really going to get into technical aspects in this video, because I think that there's a lot of overlooked things that happen prior to a person drawing or picking up a pen and starting to draw. There's a lot of other questions you need to ask yourself before you even start. And I guess the first thing would be, what are you going to draw? And that question involves you doing some thinking about well, what are you passionate about? Because I would never advise anybody to draw things that they aren't passionate about, or force yourself to do exercises in drawing that just suck the life out of you. The number of times in art class where I had to, sketch a chair or something like that, and for some reason, as simple as that sounds, it was torture for me, because that's just not the style of drawing that I enjoy most. I approach drawing from a character design approach. I love creating characters and different designs for them. And so you should know that at the top of the video too, so that way you know where I'm coming from or the style of art that I'm talking about. But I'm trying to phrase things in ways in this video where it's applicable to pretty much any style of art or whatever it is you're going for. But the first big thing is just identifying what it is that you enjoy drawing, or what you might enjoy drawing. It takes some time for some people to actually think through their passions when it comes to media. Do you enjoy drawing superheroes? Do you enjoy drawing landscapes? There's a lot of different things to draw, lots of different subjects. And to start, you have to identify what those things are for you. What do you think you would enjoy drawing? Now, I will say that this piece of advice does come with a bit of a disclaimer, is that a lot of times, myself included, I gain inspiration to draw after I've looked at a certain amount of other people's artworks. And I'm going to say something that by this point is pretty cliched, and I think most people are aware of this, but you really have to be careful when it comes to looking at other people's artwork and then picking up the pen or the pencil and starting, and then becoming discouraged when your art doesn't look the way that other people's art looks. This is a really, really dangerous spot for an up-and-coming artist to be in. I think it's one of the most dangerous things that can happen. And I think possibly one of the main contributors to why people give up art or drawing is when they start comparing themselves to people who have been in the field for decades, people who are at the top of their game, people who practice every day, and you compare yourself to them, and it's not even close. And that can shut a lot of people down. And it's happened to me before, where I've looked at other people's artwork and I've become discouraged. It's this really weird emotional whiplash where it goes from me being impressed by something that somebody made, and then immediately following that, my own art looks like dirt by comparison. But that would be the first thing to me, would be to narrow down what it is that you're interested in drawing. And that's an important first step. And it may seem like duh, obviously, but even artists who've been drawing for years, every once in a while, you may go through a slump where you don't have any inspiration. You don't know what to draw. And I'm blessed because the kind of art that I do, the kind of drawing that I do, character creation-wise, I have thousands of characters to pull from. If I'm ever bored or at a loss for what to do, I'll just redraw something that I drew, 7 years ago and breathe new life into it. So I'm usually not at a loss for what to draw necessarily, but that's not the same for everyone. And I want to make sure that I mention that, is that it's not easy for everybody to figure out what it is that they want to draw. So once you've figured out what it is that you want to draw, if you're able to do that, another piece of advice that I've mentioned before to friends of mine is examine why you want to start drawing. And this one may be a little bit weird, but in our modern world, when it comes to content creation and production and having a digital presence, there's a lot of pressure to monetize what you're doing. Like whatever it is, whatever you create, it has to be marketable and it has to find success on whatever platform you put it up on. Otherwise, for a lot of people, they see it as a loss. There's no point in doing what they're doing unless they are receiving attention or views or clicks or accolades or comments. And I would say that there's aspects of that maybe later on that can happen, and kudos to you if it does. But I would always encourage anybody considering getting into drawing, examine your reason why you want to draw. Is it because it's something you want to do for yourself? Or is it because you crave affirmation from other people? Or do you crave it because you want monetary success? I'm not dogging on either of those two things in and of themselves, but if that's the only reason why you're getting into it, at least for a lot of artists, you will find yourself sorely disappointed, because things are not going to move as fast as you would hope. And that's not necessarily to say that there aren't some savants out there that have found success very quickly or have had a meteoric rise. That's absolutely possible, but I would say that's an exception, not the rule. And it would be very easy for me, I feel, that if my main and primary purpose for drawing was to find success in any way, shape, or form, whether that's money or attention or fame, popularity, you name it, I probably would have given up drawing a long time ago if that was my metric. You know, if I couldn't enjoy what I was doing unless I was making money off it or getting a bunch of attention, I would have given up already. And I think that's been true across time for artists. Not to mention the fact that when you look online, I mean, it is just a sea of creative people putting stuff out there for the world to see. And in some ways, I think despite social media bridging groups of people together, it also has sort of turned into a torrent that you can get lost in. Like, I think people finding your artwork is easier in some respects and harder in others than 100 years ago, right? Obviously, back then, before the age of the internet, it was hard for artists to get recognized internationally, right? They might be able to impress some people locally wherever they were, but they would have to tour, and their art would have to be good enough that somebody wanted to show it in a special location, like a museum, or they wanted to do some sort of event that showcased their work, something like that. And that was hard enough back then. Now, people have the capability to post art on a bunch of different platforms, but because everyone has that access, I mean, a lot of stuff just gets buried and people just won't see it because there's a zillion other people doing what you're doing. And that's not to diminish it by any extent. I just offer up that warning when it comes to examining why it is that you want to draw, because if attention, success, money, etc., if any of those things are the only reason why you're drawing, you may have a very difficult go of it, because if you won't be able to enjoy it until you strike gold, essentially. And obviously that might happen, and if it does happen, good for you. But I would never want to do a hobby where I could only be satisfied with it or with myself if it was wildly successful or if I was getting some sort of monetary reward from it. I think I would burn out on that thing pretty quick. So try and figure out what it is that you want to draw. Examine why it is that you want to draw, because that also can help whittle down how you display your art or where you display your art. So once you have that figured out, that can help guide you in a direction as to where to go with your art once you start drawing, is the reason for it. For me, it's always been about the enjoyment. I love the creative process. I love ideas getting resurrected. I love ideas evolving and transforming and becoming the best versions of themselves. I have so much paper that I need to sort through in my room because of all the papers and all of the notebooks and sketches that I've done over the years that I never gave up on, because I feel that there is something good there. It just may take a little time before I'm able to do the idea that I had in 5th grade justice, and that may be a long time before I'm able to do it. But I feel that I owe it to myself, my past self, to keep hold of those things that I made when I was younger, and not get rid of it. I mean, unless you absolutely hate it, but if there's even a kernel of a good idea there, I would encourage you to hold on to it. When it comes to how to start drawing, the first 2 things that I mentioned, like I said, would be figure out what it is that you want to draw. Second of all would be to examine your reasons why you want to draw. And the third one may seem very obvious, but you have to start. And this may be one of the most difficult aspects of drawing, not just in general, but for every individual project that I have ever undergone. The prospect of actually starting something is daunting, right? And some people may advise that you run out and buy an expensive notebook and some expensive pens or expensive pencils. But actually, I don't know. I think I would start as small as possible, because then you're not heaping a bunch of expectations on yourself. I have so many empty drawing notebooks, and the reason why is I'm almost afraid to start drawing in them, because I feel that whatever I put in there has to match the quality of the materials that the notebook is made out of. I know that sounds ridiculous, but if it's a nice or an expensive notebook, I don't want to just put random crummy sketches in there, right? So I would just grab some regular paper and some pencils and pens. I mean, I guess that all depends on what kind of art you plan on doing. But if we're just talking in the drawing sphere, I've always been a big proponent of the simplest solution when it comes to material. For me, it also comes down to materials that I like, things that are tried and true, materials that work well for me. That's what I'm always going to gravitate towards ahead of some super expensive art thing, whatever that thing may be. Comfort is a big key for me in being able to get my ideas out quick. That's why I like pen and paper, is because, at least for me, I feel that I'm able to move the pen across the surface of the paper easier than a pencil. And the permanence of it forces me to work with my mistakes instead of constantly worrying about erasing it. It sort of gets rid of that safety net, I suppose. And, I mean, you can see what I'm doing. This is just sketching. The only character that I had a sketch of prior to the video starting was the Night Warden over there on the left. These 3 characters off to the right here are just off the dome. And since I have a general idea that it's like a nighttime theme, and I'm sticking with that, I have like a shadow figure, I have like a salesman, and on the inside of his coat there's a bunch of eyes. Don't know if you can see that. And then for the last one, I decided to go with like a big bat character. But these are just rough sketches, and I think that's one of the main reasons why I didn't want to throw this into time-lapse. I didn't want to discourage anybody by having like a finished artwork by the end of this video on how to draw. I wanted to just start with a very basic, very simple aspect of drawing, and I think this is actually my favorite part of drawing. Granted, I really do like the final product. I'm not saying I don't like that, but as far as just raw fun, I think the freedom of just free sketching is, I don't know if I can find anything that beats that. So I want to leave you guys with some encouragement here, because so all through all through high school, while I was working on getting my Eagle Scout, I would meet these guys, these older men who were in Scouts, and when the topic was brought up, they'd sort of get this sad look in their eye, and then most all of them said something like, "I wish I would have stayed in. I always regret that. I wish that I would have stayed in and got my Eagle. I was so close, but I didn't make it." And it was those types of conversations that really molded me when it comes to trying my best at something and not giving up, because I see the end result of that regret. I would see it, I would hear it in our conversations, and I think to myself, I refuse to allow that to happen to me. I don't want to have those sorts of regrets. And when it comes to drawing, if you have even a passing fancy in drawing at all, I implore you to just start. Just start. Don't wait until you have the super expensive materials. Don't wait until you have the super expensive notebooks or pens or any of that. Just start. Find what it is that you like to draw and start. And again, from the character design aspect, I'm extremely fortunate because I have all these side projects that I've created these characters for. And so they all sort of exist in their own world together. And so there's some cohesion there. I know what I'm drawing has a grander purpose, and it's me working on all these side projects for things that I may be able to use in the future. You can think of it like an investment if you want to, even though that's a super dry way of putting it, I guess. But these characters are being drawn for a purpose. So that way, in future, if I ever am in need of characters, I have a wealth of them to pull from. I can't speak as definitively on other types of art, like realism. So I don't have a bunch of good advice for people who just like sketching things from reality or figure drawing. Like, I don't have a bunch of advice in that realm because that's not where I spend most of my time. But no matter what it is that you want to draw, once you figure that out, I implore you to just start. Just start. And don't, if you can, I know some people have a really hard time with this, don't fret about the end result, and don't only create so that way you can post it online. Draw stuff for you. And I think the more practiced you get at just drawing for your own entertainment is going to increase your enjoyment of drawing in general a lot. You know, if I was drawing these characters that I'm drawing on this piece of paper, and I knew that, you know, the end result, my whole reason for drawing them was so I could, you know, fulfill some sort of self-imposed schedule on Instagram to like post X number of drawings every month, I don't think I would have nearly as much enjoyment. And I think I would fret all my mistakes a lot more if I was drawing solely for the purpose of posting it online to garner support or praise or fulfill an obligation that I've set on myself. This is the sort of sketching that I would be doing whether there was a camera on or not. This is oftentimes where I go. I'll just turn on a YouTube video or some music on Spotify, and I'll just sketch. Obviously, the question of how do I start to draw is a massive one, and there's a lot of things that go into that. But I think the main thing that I would tell people is that if you are interested in drawing at all, don't shake your head and walk away because you feel like you wouldn't be good at it, you know? Don't allow yourself to be defeated before you even go off to battle. Creatives can sort of lose battles in their own mind before they've even begun. And it's really sad whenever I see people who say something like, all I can draw is a stick figure, or I can't even draw a stick figure. And always behind that, there's sadness. But I would always advise people to just start. Keep trying. Keep going. And as far as this video, I'm just wrapping it up here. Hopefully I'll be able to do a couple more of these that get into more details about sketching. But that's pretty much it for this video, so thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.